transformation's a journey. So having seen transformation in different industries, I think you're right in what you're saying. It's about taking on different parts of the business and taking them on that journey and realizing that value that's going to be delivered through the work that you'll do. I think what's been fascinating for me to see is how that's being applied to oil and gas at the moment, and actually seeing how some people are actually pivoting, especially during this period at the moment, and almost nodding to digitalization, that it's something that they need to be trying to do. I just sort of butt in and say that as I was listening. It came
I think that's been going on since 2015. In actual fact, we did see a switch and a trend that people were saying, you know, this is not a nice to have anymore. You know, we have no choice. And I think we're beginning to see that. And I would say actually most of the projects that we have seen or been involved in over the last 10 or 12 years have always had an element of you've got no choice. I mean, one of the reasons why we did a huge amount of work in Australia in between the period of 2012 and 2015 and 16 and before the oil price crash was the fact that they were just short of people. They didn't have the human resources to run oil and gas and mining operations in the way that they've been run in the previous 20 years. They just didn't have anybody. I mean, it was a bit of a standing joke that, you know, if you sat in a cafe in Perth long enough and you'd had anything to do with anything technical, you get offered a job. And you know, there were engineers swapping from one company to another and getting 15% pay rises every 6 months because there was such a shortage of people. And so the knock-on effect was, you know, if you're going to drill, you know, 10,000 coal bed methane wells across Queensland, you know, and your traditional number of wells per operator is 20 wells per operator, then you're going to need to recruit 500 operators. And that was just impossible. So then the driver was okay, if we can't have, you know, what's the number of wells per operator we need to make this viable? And the answer was over 100 or even 120 or even 200. And then, you know, if you do that, how do you run an operation with 10,000 wells with one operator for 200 wells? Well, you've got to have the data and information to tell them where to go on a daily basis. Yeah. And so that one thing unlocked the comms. You know, yes, we've got to have comms. Yes, we've got to have data. Yes, we've got to store the data. Yes, we've got to have a center. Yes, we've got to collaborate. And everything was unlocked basically from that one thing. And I think that is still the case. And, you know, there's been a couple of, you know, very interesting results from that, I would say. You know, one, the more remote your operation is, the more inherently obvious it is to do things remotely because it's difficult to get there. And so the driver's been very strong in these very remote places. And, you know, when I was in BP and we started Field the Future in 2003, the surprise was that we thought the biggest uptake was going to be in Aberdeen, in Houston and in Alaska. In actual fact, the pool was from Azerbaijan, Indonesia and Angola. And the reason is if you sit in Houston and you support an operation offshore in the Gulf of Mexico and you have a problem, well, you can get any vendor on the planet into your office within a couple of hours and you can get them offshore within half a day. If you're actually in Tanggu on, you know, Papua New Guinea, like, you know, it's 48 hours and 4 flights from Jakarta, let alone anywhere else.